The night I found out, I did not scream. I did not call him. I did not drive to the door and pound on it until my knuckles bled. I sat in my car, engine off, lights off, in the dark, and I stared at my husband's silver Tahoe parked directly in front of my sister's apartment building. And I made a decision. Not an emotional one. Not a desperate one. A decision so precise, so patient, so quietly devastating, that 14 months later, Cordell had lost his business deal, his reputation, and nearly half of everything he thought was his. And Renata, my sister, my blood, the woman I had lent money to, moved furniture for, defended in family arguments for 37 years. She lost something she will never get back. But I am getting ahead of myself. Because if you think this is a story about catching a cheating husband, you are underestimating what actually happened here by a wide margin. This is a story about a woman who was invisible for 14 years. And what happened when she finally decided to be seen. Stay with me, because the twist in this story is something I promise you are not prepared for. My name is Waverly Mensa. And I want to start by telling you exactly who I was before all of this, because you cannot understand the ending without understanding the beginning. I was the woman who never needed credit. That was my identity for 14 years. I was the one who worked in the background, kept things running, filled the gaps nobody else noticed, and never once demanded to be acknowledged for it. I ironed Cordell's shirts without being asked. I remembered his mother's birthday before he did. I stayed up past midnight finishing his business proposals because his grammar was embarrassing and his pride wouldn't let him admit it. I was organized, loyal, and quietly indispensable. And as it turns out, that is an extraordinarily dangerous combination when you are married to a man who has quietly decided that indispensable and irreplaceable are not the same thing. Cordell Brewington was not a flashy man. That was part of what I had loved about him. He didn't perform. He didn't need an audience. He was steady, or so I had believed for 14 years. We had built something real together. A home outside of Atlanta. 2 kids, our son Mateo, 11 years old, and our daughter Priya, who was 9. And a business, a mid-sized logistics company called Brew and Move that I had helped him build from our dining room table in 2013 with a second-hand laptop, a borrowed printer, and my personal savings account. I need you to hear that part clearly. My personal savings account. I had drafted the original business plan. I designed the first logo. I made the cold calls when Cordell's nerves got the better of him. I kept the books for the first 3 years. I built the client tracking system in a spreadsheet that eventually became the backbone of their operations. Brew and Move had my fingerprints on every surface. It just didn't have my name on the paperwork. That was fine. I trusted him. That is what marriage is supposed to mean. Now, let me tell you about Renata. Renata is my younger sister. For years between us. She was always the vivid one, loud laugh, magnetic, the first to dance, the last to leave. Growing up, she was the fun sister, and I was the responsible one. I had made peace with that. Mostly. By the time this story takes place, Renata was going through what she called a transitional phase. Lost her job. Lease expired. Last relationship ended badly. She called me and asked if she could borrow money for an apartment deposit. I gave her $2,200 without blinking. Didn't ask for a timeline. Didn't ask for it back. She found an apartment 20 minutes from our house. Nice building. Modern. 2nd floor. Parking lot out front. I had been there exactly twice. Until the night, I wasn't supposed to be there at all. It was a Thursday in late October. Cordell had been working late most of that month. Closing a major contract with a new distribution partner. That was the explanation. He'd come home after the kids were in bed, eat whatever I'd left in the microwave, shower, and be asleep before I'd finished reading a single page of my book. I was tired too. I told myself, we were just in a season. That particular Thursday, I was driving back from a pharmacy about 15 minutes from Renata's building. I wasn't planning to pass her street. I took a wrong turn. My mind was somewhere else, replaying a conversation I'd had with Mateo's teacher earlier that day. And then I saw it. Row 2. Spot 7. Cordell's silver Tahoe. Parked in the lot of my sister's apartment building. Now, I know what you're thinking. Could it have been a mistake? Could it have been someone else's truck?
No.
I know that vehicle the way I know my own hands. The crack in the lower right corner of the back windshield from when Mateo threw a baseball the summer before. The custom license plate frame I had ordered online for Cordell's birthday. The one that reads, Brew and Move, Atlanta's finest. That was his truck. I pulled over on the street. I turned off my headlights. And I sat there for 47 minutes. I know exactly how long because I watched the clock on my dashboard the entire time. Not because I was waiting for something, but because some part of my brain needed something to hold on to, and numbers were the only thing that felt solid. At no point did I go inside. At no point did I call either of them. Here is what I did do. I took 3 photographs. Close up on the license plate. Wide shot of the parking lot. One that showed the building number clearly in the background. Then I drove home, made chamomile tea, sat at my kitchen table, and I started thinking. Now, I won't pretend I felt nothing. There was a moment, sitting at that table, when something cracked open inside my chest. A grief I did not have a name for yet. A rage I did not have room for yet. Both at the same time, pressing against each other like 2 walls closing in. But underneath both of those things was something else entirely. Clarity. And that clarity rested on something I had not thought about in 8 months. 8 months before that night, I had accompanied Cordell to a meeting with our business attorney, a woman named Dorothea Fenn. It was routine, updating some provisions in the operating agreement. Standard. Boring. The kind of meeting Cordell assumed I was only attending to be supportive. During that meeting, Dorothea had mentioned something almost in passing. She said that in Georgia, marital assets, including business interests built during the marriage, are subject to equitable distribution in a divorce. She said that if a spouse could demonstrate documented contribution to a business, even without formal ownership, that contribution is factored in. I had filed that information away like a receipt I wasn't sure I'd need. I was sure now, but there was something else. Something more urgent. And this is where the story takes a turn that most people do not see coming. About a year before that October night, Cordell had begun conversations with an investor named Preston Wakefield, a man out of Charlotte who held a portfolio of regional logistics companies. Cordell wanted to bring him in as a silent partner. Capital injection in exchange for a percentage stake in Brew and Move. Those conversations had been conducted entirely through Cordell's email account. The email account I had set up for him in 2014. The one he had never changed the password to. I went into that account the morning after I saw the truck. I was not looking for more betrayal. I was looking for financial documents, anything that would tell me what was being planned. What I found instead was a thread between Cordell and Renata. 9 months of messages. I will not read them to you in detail. I will not give those words more air than they have already stolen from me. But I will tell you about one specific email. 6 weeks before that October night, Cordell had written to Renata about the Wakefield deal. He said he was planning to finalize the partnership before the end of the year. And once the capital came in, he intended to restructure the company in a way that would, and these were his exact words, complicate things in the event of any future legal proceedings. He was building his financial escape route while I was still in the house, while I was still making his coffee and packing his children's lunches. He wasn't just betraying me as a husband. He was preparing to rob me as a business partner. And Renata, my sister, my blood, the woman I had handed $2,200 to without a second thought, had replied to that email with 3 words. Smart. Be careful. I read those 3 words so many times that night that they lost their meaning and became just shapes on a screen. And then something happened inside me that I don't have a perfect word for. It wasn't anger. It was older than anger. It was the feeling of a door closing. Quietly. Finally. And completely. The next morning, I made Cordell's coffee exactly the way he liked it. I packed the kids' lunches. I found Mateo's missing shin guard behind the dryer. I reminded Priya about her library book. I kissed Cordell on the cheek before he left. And the moment that silver Tahoe backed out of my driveway, I picked up my phone and called Dorothea Fenn. I told her everything. The emails, the 9 months, the Wakefield deal, the restructuring language, the 3 photographs from the parking lot. Dorothea was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Waverly, I need you to not touch anything, not move any money, and not say a single word to your husband or your sister."
Can you do that?
I said, "I've been doing that my entire marriage. I think I can manage a little longer." She paused, and then she said, "Good, because what you've just described is not a divorce case. It's a financial fraud case dressed in a divorce case's clothing, and we're going to treat it accordingly." I felt something in my chest settle, like a compass needle finding north. Dorothea filed for legal separation and simultaneously filed a motion to freeze all marital assets pending divorce proceedings. That motion meant one thing above all else. Cordell could not finalize the deal with Preston Wakefield. Any transfer of business interest was now legally flagged and subject to court review. The escape hatch he had spent months building was sealed shut before he ever reached it. He was served on a Tuesday morning, at his office, in front of 2 employees. I was in the school pickup line when it happened. I watched the clock on my phone, and at 10:47 a.m., my screen lit up with his name. I let it ring. His voicemail was 6 minutes long. I listened to it once, deleted it, and went inside to start dinner. But here is what I need you to understand. Up to this point, everything I have described, the legal filing, the asset freeze, the evidence gathering, none of it was the revenge. That was just the foundation. The revenge came in 3 parts, and each one hit differently. 3 weeks into proceedings, Cordell's attorney presented what they called a settlement proposal. The house, a monthly support figure, and a buyout from the business that was frankly designed to be insulting. The number implied I had contributed almost nothing to brew and move. What they did not know was what I had spent the previous 3 weeks assembling. Cold call logs from 2013 and 2014, a spreadsheet I had kept out of personal habit. The original business plan, still carrying my edit history in the document metadata. Invoices from vendors I had personally sourced and negotiated with. Bank transfer records showing 4 separate deposits from my personal savings account into the business account during the first 2 years. A client relationship management system I had built by hand in a spreadsheet and handed off to their first hire on her first day of work. 14 years of invisible labor, suddenly very visible. Dorothea presented this to Cordell's attorney on a Wednesday afternoon. By Thursday morning, their office had gone completely silent. The settlement offer they came back with 3 weeks later was not the same number. Not even close. Preston Wakefield conducted standard due diligence before any investment. Part of that due diligence included a review of pending litigation involving the business or its principals. Divorce proceedings in Georgia become public record. Wakefield pulled out of the deal within 2 weeks of the filing becoming visible. His statement to Cordell's attorney cited, and I want you to appreciate the precision of this language, unresolved legal exposure. The capital injection Cordell had spent over a year pursuing evaporated. The expansion he had planned, a new warehouse, 2 additional truck routes, a distribution partnership with a regional grocery chain, all of it collapsed before it ever began. 3 of Brew and Move's best drivers left for a competitor within 60 days. Their operations manager, a woman named Sula, who had been with the company for 6 years and who, as it happens, had been hired based on a recommendation I had made, submitted her resignation with a 2-sentence letter. Cordell later told someone in his family that it was the most professional evisceration he had ever received. He wasn't wrong. This is the part about Renata. And I need you to stay with me here, because what I did, and what I chose not to do, is what makes this part of the story unlike anything you are expecting. About a month after Cordell was served, Renata called me. She had clearly been coached on what to say. Her voice was measured, almost rehearsed. She said she was sorry. She said it had gotten out of hand. She said she hoped that someday, not now, but someday, we might find a way to rebuild. I let her speak. Every single word. When she finished, I was quiet for a moment. And then I said, "Renata, I want you to know that I forgive you." She exhaled. This long, slow breath, like something she had been holding in her body for months finally had permission to leave. And I said, "I also want you to know that I found the emails." Silence. All of them, including the one where you told him to be careful. More silence. So I need you to understand something. What is happening to Cordell right now, the frozen assets, the collapsed investor deal, the legal proceedings, none of that is an accident. And none of it happened without me. I paused. But here is what I actually did to you, Renata, she said, and her voice had changed completely. What do you mean? I said, do you remember Aunt Celestine's birthday dinner? 3 weeks ago. She said yes. Do you remember who was there? She said the whole family. Mom. The cousins. Aunt Celestine. And, do you remember that I was not there? She said yes. I was not there because I was at a different dinner. With Cordell's mother. And his 2 sisters. And his Aunt Mavis. Silence again. Longer this time. I had dinner with his family, Renata. And I told them the truth. All of it. The 9 months. The emails. The 3 words you sent him. I showed them the screenshots on my phone. I heard her breathing change. His mother cried. His sister Deja said she would never speak to him again until he made it right. His Aunt Mavis, you've met Mavis. She asked me if I needed anything. She asked if the children were okay. Renata said nothing. His family knows what you did. My family knows what you did. And I did not have to say a single ugly word or make a single accusation. I just showed them what was already there. I gave her one more moment of silence. And then I said, you didn't lose me, Renata. You lost everyone. I made sure of it. And I hung up. Now, I want to tell you what happened next. Because this is the part that I did not plan. This is the part that happened on its own. Cordell and Renata, as it turned out, had very different visions of what their future was supposed to look like once I was gone. Renata had imagined a man with a thriving business and a clean exit. A fresh start. Something that made the destruction of her family feel worth it. What arrived instead was a financially diminished man living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Decatur, managing a company that had shrunk, lost key staff, and missed the most significant growth opportunity in its history, all while navigating a divorce settlement that had surprised him deeply. The version of Cordell that Renata had burned everything for no longer existed. By the following spring, they were barely speaking. By summer, it was over. I heard this from my cousin Beverly, who has, in 35 years, never successfully kept a secret for more than 4 days. I did not celebrate when I heard it. I did not feel joy. What I felt was something quieter. Something that took me a few days to name. It was the feeling of a natural law proving itself. You cannot build something real on the wreckage of someone else's life. It doesn't matter how much you want to. The foundation is already broken before you lay the first stone. I did not need to engineer Renata's consequence. She had chosen it herself the moment she typed those 3 words. Smart. Be careful. Let me tell you what my life looked like 18 months after that Thursday night. I had gone back to school. A business law certificate program at a university near Atlanta. Not because I planned to become an attorney, but because I had spent 14 years watching someone else hold the legal keys to something I had helped build. I had decided, very quietly, that I would never be in that position again. I had also started consulting. Small business owners who needed help with operations, systems, documentation. The very work I had done for Brew and Move for over a decade, now done for people who looked me in the eye, said my name out loud, and wrote me a check with my name on it. Mateo and Priya adjusted. Children are more resilient than we give them credit for, especially when both parents make the decision to behave like adults. There were hard nights. Questions I didn't have clean answers to. Moments where I stood outside one of their bedroom doors after they'd fallen asleep and felt the full weight of everything this had cost us. I won't pretend otherwise. I won't wrap the pain in a bow and hand it to you as a lesson. It hurt. It still does, in the places that don't show. But there was also something else in that house. Something that had not been there in a long time. Air. Real air. The kind you can breathe all the way down. The night before the divorce was finalized, I sat on my back porch alone. The kids were asleep. It was February, cold, but not bitter. There were stars. I thought about that woman at the kitchen table. Chamomile. 3 photographs. 47 minutes of sitting in the dark. I thought about every moment where I could have detonated everything, driven into that parking lot, pounded on the door, made a scene large enough to justify the size of what I was feeling. And I thought about what Dorothea had said to me. What you've described isn't a divorce case. It's a financial fraud case dressed in a divorce case's clothing. She was right. And the only reason I could prove it, the only reason any of it worked, was because I had stayed quiet long enough to know what I was actually dealing with. Rage would have cost me everything I ultimately won. Patience cost me nothing, but time I would have spent suffering anyway. And then I thought about something else. Something Cordell had said to me 8 months before that night, in the parking lot after the meeting with Dorothea. We were walking to the car. He was in a good mood. And he said casually, almost fondly, like he was complimenting me, "You know what I love about you, Waverly? You never pay attention to the boring stuff." He said it like he was describing something sweet about me. He meant it like he was describing a limitation. I had smiled and gotten into the car. I had not told him that I had been paying attention to everything. Every number, every meeting, every document, every offhand comment, every email. For 14 years. I had simply never felt the need to tell him. And that single, quiet, 14-year-long secret, that was ultimately the most expensive thing Cordell Brewington ever underestimated about me. Here is what I want to leave you with. The most dangerous person in any room is not the loudest one. It is not the most aggressive one. It is not the one making the most noise or taking up the most space. It is the one who has been quietly watching, quietly building, quietly learning, and simply has not yet decided what to do with everything they know. Cordell thought my silence was contentment. It was preparation. There is a version of this story where I walk into that apartment building and blow everything apart in a single night, where I become the unstable one, the dramatic one, the one the attorneys used to make me look unreliable. I chose a different version. And in that version, I won. Not just the settlement. Not just the house. Not just the business stake. I won the thing that no courtroom can give you and no betrayal can take away. I won back myself. And if there is someone watching this right now who is sitting at their own kitchen table, in their own version of that night, hands wrapped around their own mug, wondering what to do next, I want you to hear this clearly. Do not let them see you break. Let them keep thinking you never pay attention to the boring stuff. And then show them exactly what you've been paying attention to all along. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Drop a comment and tell us, what would you have done in Waverly's position? We read every single one. And if you're new here, welcome. You found the right place.